everybody.
It landed!
Yeah, 'cause it's a magnet.
I know, but still.
Okay, so today we're playing with magnets. So Buckle Guy sells these cool magnets sets. They make them. They have a bunch of different shapes. I'm making a little bag here, and I've never really messed around with magnetic closures. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how I did this sort of pancake, very flat magnet closure by doing the front side of it. Now there are two, obviously, you need two magnets. So one is already sewn in here. The other one I'm going to sew in here. So what I did was, for proof of concept, I picked up just a cheap $11 or $12 set of circle dies off of Amazon. This came with like 10 or 11 dies. They're very, very cheap. I had to bend this one back. They're basically as thick as a cookie cutter, but for this, they did the job and proved the concept. So I'm just going to go through. What we're going to do is, my goal was to try to get, the usual way to do these is you would install it kind of like this and have a bump. What I wanted to do was I wanted everything to be flat. So I'm using, this is 8-ounce leather. We're going to center everything up. I have my dots here just to get the right positioning. We're going to use that dot. We're going to basically set this in like an inlay into this piece of leather, and then use two pieces of leather, lining them up perfectly to kind of make a sandwich with a magnet in the middle, and hopefully everything will be nice and level. I just thought this was kind of a cool little thing that I want to share with you in a video on its own. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to be using our dividers a lot for this. This is 20 millimeters, this small circle, which is basically the size, maybe 21 or 22 is the perfect size for this, but 20 works well. I'm going to set my dividers to 10, and then we're going to trace out our circle from the hole that we punched so that we know that we're pretty well centered. So this is the hole we're using. This is the hole we're using, and I'm just going to trace that. And then we're going to go over to the press and we're going to punch this out. So with our hole punched, you can see that we're pretty well lined up, and the idea is that this is going to fit right in there flush, see? So it's pretty much flat, well, on both sides. Next thing I need to do is I just need two of these, the bigger circles. This is 30 millimeter, I believe. Yep, 30 millimeters, so I'm just going to punch these out real quick. And I'm just using 4-ounce leather for this, nothing super thick. And I'm going light. These are super sharp, so you can dig like super deep if you do get these, which, I don't know, I mean, they're not going to last a long time, but they're good for just trying it out. I'll probably have 2 actual circle dies made from real steel if I keep making things like this. Next thing we're going to do is actually punch our holes. So I'm going about this by punching all the holes individually, and then we're going to line them all up. Just because this would be very, very thick, and we're working with really, really small tolerances with this hole, it's easier to punch everything separately to make sure the needle gets through everything. So the two things we need to punch right now are just these circles, and I'm using a 3 millimeter spacing from the edge. So once we have everything punched out, I did put my logo on the center of the top one. This is where we have to line things up. So these magnets are in casings, right? Because they're rare earth magnets, so they're kind of brittle on their own. They need a casing on the outside. The strongest part is, geez, see, to get them apart, if you put them there, that's how you can split them. So I have this one is facing up, which means I want this one facing down for the strongest connection. So what I'm going to do is this blank one is going to be the one that goes on the underside. I'm going to center this face down on that underside, and I'm going to glue it. The way I'm going to do that to make sure everything is centered is, this is 20 millimeters and this is 30 millimeters. So we're going to make this, we're going to make our dividers set to 5 millimeters, which is half of the difference. And we're just going to trace a little line around here so we know where to center our magnet. Pretty good for never taking a math class in college, huh?
I guess so.
Basic math. Congratulations. And then I'm just going to do a little dab of barge in the center of this and on the magnet itself. So while that glue is drying, I'm going to take that same 5 millimeter spacing and I'm going to trace a light line around the big hole that we punched. And this is going to help us get our entire piece, top cap, bottom cap, perfectly centered. So you can see here, that shows us exactly where we're going to put this. Now we're going to pre-punch this as well. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to line this up so that it's right where I want it. And then I'm just going to mark out the holes. This isn't the most graceful way to do it, but it's the way to ensure that everything ends up exactly where we want it, perfectly centered, looking real nice. Now comes time to line everything up. We're going to do this one piece at a time. I'm going to do a little glue around the outside of this top cap part. I don't think there are any real names to any of these things, but and then oh, that, don't put it upside down. That's, oh my god, what am I even doing right now?
It's like when you drop your toast and it always lands butter side down.
Yeah. Is that a physics thing? Is this because it's heavier? It always flips down?
Yeah, I think so.
Then I'm very carefully gonna do a little bit of glue around the outside where our stitch holes are. You can also just kind of give that a smear. Just enough to hold it. Now that our glue's dry on our back piece, we're just going to use the marks that we made to plop this down as centered as we can. You don't want to hammer this, just press it. And there's that. Now we got to get into installing this whole thing. I'm going to use needles to line this stuff up. Probably 4 needles. And I'm going to put one, and then I'm going to skip 4 holes, and then put another one, and skip 4 holes, and put another one, etc. 3, 4. There we go. Then I'm going to come over to our top here, and I'm going to put the needles in the coinciding holes on the flap itself. And this is the place where I say, like, if you want to just glue everything together and then punch through, go for it. I just want to, I'm not good enough to get all of this perfectly lined up and then punch through. I don't feel confident in that, and so this is kind of a surefire, albeit a little bit slower way to make sure that everything's lined up. So once we have all of the needles through in all of the right holes, all we have to do is push this down slowly and use that guide that we made, that guide mark with our dividers, to make sure we land in the correct spot. Fairly certain that, we'll test it with our needles because it's not too late to pop it off if we're not aligned, but you can see all of our holes, no matter which one we go in, are lined up. I'm going to give that a little tap to set the glue. Next, we're going to add a little dab of glue in the center here, and a little dab of glue on our magnet. We're going to basically do the same thing on this side, when this glue is dry. So to do the back one, basically did the same thing. I put the needles through this side, and then I just counted everything. And now we're just going to push it down and make sure the magnet ends up in that hole. And there we go. So we have the magnet in the hole. Your glue will come out a little bit sometimes. Don't worry about it, because now we just need to sew everything down together. And you can see we have a nice flat, the magnet's sufficiently sunk in this layer. It's not going to be totally perfect unless you use like really thick leather, but this is like 7/8 ounce. And you'll see when we go to close this, we're going to have to do some massaging to get it to stay closed at first, because it is a little bit of a thicker leather. But once it gets worn in, it works perfectly. And here we go. So, Kalina doesn't agree with this, but this whole bag is kind of a train wreck. It's scrap leather. I've been testing out different things on it. But it is a good proof of concept, and it does show you these magnets are nice and strong. It's a super low profile closure. I say this, I have such a hard time with closures, so finding something that's really easy I really appreciate it. And this is just, so this is 8 ounce veg tan. I just kind of, didn't really break it in, but I just kind of bent it enough to where, you know, it keeps a bend like that. It's not lined, so I couldn't glue the bend in. But if you're lining it, you would want to glue the bend in. And if you're lining it, you could also just sink this magnet into the lining instead of doing a cap. But I really love it. It's really cool, very modern. But at the same time, it's, I don't know, it's not modern because you don't see any closure at all. So it's just kind of like that magic touch where you're like, oh, I don't want to have to design in a closure. You just do a little cap like this. So that's pretty much it. We've been doing a lot of long videos. I want to do something simple, and I've never really played around with magnets before, and Buckle Guy kind of threw a bunch of them at us and said, here, try these out. And they're really, really cool. One side thing, remember, you don't have to do, if you don't have the hole punches or anything, you can just cut out a circle, glue this down to the flap itself, and stitch a leather cap around it. Works just as well. I just wanted to see if we could sandwich it and get a nice flat profile. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.